bitches, every city in my tribe. Look behind. Booty dominate the world, peaches ripe.
Both my uncles died, I think, prematurely because of toxic masculinity. And I think the way that they treated my female family members has also affected me. I am the child of an abused parent, and I was raised in a multi-generational household with my grandma and mother. So one parent was the victim of domestic violence by my grandfather, and my other parent was the victim of child abuse from my grandfather.
Mm. What do you think would change toxic masculinity then, in your opinion? What do you think would stop it?
Honestly, more feminist ideas, because I think so much heteronormativity is rooted in male dominance, which I think also goes into like gender roles and the constructions of masculinity and femininity.
Have you seen like the feminists on the news? Like, do you think the media picks them out to sort of, I don't know how to explain it. Like some feminists on the news, like you're quite respectful.
Can you give me like a name? Can you give me a name of like a feminist you see on the news? Oh, I just you had to go look it up.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yeah, you left the app, so I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I can't give a name, but there was one that I was watching on ITV. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments. There was one on ITV who was, they were quite rude. They were quite obnoxious. I think that one of the comments that they made was that women's mental health is more important than men's mental health because they have a more caring role. And I just wanted to know what your stance is on that. Like, what's your opinion on that?
I don't disagree. I think everyone's mental health is equal in terms of importance. I think how we address men's and women's mental health is different. And I think under the patriarchy, I think men have kind of centered themselves in a lot of areas that continue to leave women marginalized.
Do you think women still have the same rights as men when it comes to voting or not?
Obviously there's no discrimination in terms of, well, I shouldn't say that. I still do think there is racial discrimination and targeting within like the United States voting system. But if we're looking at where like equity would be meaningful, I would argue that politically we don't see a lot of female representation.
I'm sorry, I'm not on here to sort of debate. I'm just here to like gather some information, just because I want to learn more about like feminism and stuff like that. Because
I mean, if you want to learn more about feminism, and this is to everyone watching, I would really recommend Verso Books. It's actually linked in my bio. For $10 a month, you can get a electronic subscription, essentially, where they give you all of their published ebooks a month for that $10. You probably get at least 5 ebooks a month, if not more, depending on how many. And they're on such a variety of topics, from capitalism to feminism to white supremacy, historical. It is the most inexpensive way to access information that I have found personally. And I'm not sponsored by them. I myself have a subscription, so I highly recommend that. Right now, in terms of what feminist literature I'm reading, I'm having a love affair with bell hooks. So I would recommend her books. There's quite a few that you can read.
Okay. Thank you for just taking the time to answer my questions. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I hope you have a great day.
You as well. Take care.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Welcome.
So the screen just gone black. That's all. Sorry. Yeah, I was just on about the toxic masculinity, but I was going to say I believe that there's toxic people, not toxic masculinity.
What do you think masculinity is?
A protector, obviously being male, being able to provide for your family, stuff along those lines. But being that does not make you toxic.
I'm not asking for what traits you consider to be masculine. I'm asking you what masculinity is in terms of like just a descriptive definition.
It's hard. I can only comment how I feel. To me, being masculine is being strong, having male characteristics. That's masculine.
Would you agree with the definition that masculinity is attributes or behaviors prescribed to men and boys?
Yeah, I would say masculinity is to men and boys, yes.
Great. So when we talk about prescribed behaviors or attributes, I would say that there are prescribed behaviors or attributes that are toxic, which is typically what we see in terms of like social conditioning, that because society expects these behaviors or attributes, men and boys strive to have these behaviors, or not necessarily strive, but they are conditioned to have these behaviors. And because of that, there are toxic behaviors, which means that they're harmful not only to themselves, but to the people around them.
So I heard, like, I've been watching for only about 10 minutes now, but I heard some things like, do you believe competitiveness in males is toxic? Because without competitive, then even in females, you can't progress through work and life. And yet I hear it all the time off feminism that being competitive in a male is toxic, which I don't see how you can be toxic just getting somewhere in life through being competitive.
I think competitiveness can be manifest in healthy forms. I was an athlete all through high school, so I enjoy the competitive spirit because I think it pushes you to become a better version of yourself and to be more skilled. When we're specifically talking about competitiveness within toxic masculinity, I would argue that we often see it not only within workplace culture, but even within professional sports as well. So I would say that competitiveness would become toxic when you especially act like a bully to maintain a constant competitive advantage. You restrain your emotions except for pride and anger. You show strength and aggression in moments of conflict. And then obviously the dominant aspect of being dominant over women and other men, which again is typically displayed through microaggressions.
But then the same could be said for toxic feminism as well, even though a lot of feminists say it doesn't exist, but it's exactly the same in that concept. Because women can be controlling.
Toxic femininity would essentially just be internalized misogyny.
See,
because the whole point of the gender binary under the patriarchy is male domination.
Okay, but what I'm trying to say is, so if a female's showing those traits, like being in a work environment, for example, like you just said, being a bit of a bully, for example, to a co-worker, say she's a supervisor, she's been a bit using the power of authority over her staff, you're trying to say that's a masculinity trait?
I'm saying that that's not prescribed to her gender identity, where it is prescribed to men and boys' gender identity.
Okay, I get what you're trying to say, but it comes across as
she's
not just you, other people as well.
Specifically women, or object. There was I don't know if you. I'm going to give a cultural example. There's a movie I recently watched called Fair Play, where a woman was promoted to a primary manager in a stock brokerage firm. And she was the only woman who was a primary manager. So she ended up going to strip clubs with the guys and essentially partaking in like male chauvinist behavior in order to assert her position or be like a part of the boys club, I would say that's internalized misogyny, because she's continued to perpetuate this idea of male dominance by reflecting male attitudes towards women.
I disagree with what you're trying to say, but I can't see the screen now, so I can't remember the questions that was on the screen. Your screen's all black. Can you just read the questions out to me? Sorry, because your screen's black. I can't see what the other one was.
So my points are pro-abortion, feminism is still needed, grape culture, purity culture, body count, toxic masculinity, and comprehensive sex health education.
Okay, yeah, I'll do the body count one, then once I've done this, I'll let you get next guest in. With the body count, I believe it does matter on both genders, male and female, in my opinion. A high body count is distasteful.
Why?
Because I understand when you're younger, you're going to experiment and stuff like that, but if a 21-year-old male or female told me they had 22 body count, to me, that means they've just played around a lot and they've got no respect for themselves.
Why does having multiple sexual partners mean you don't respect yourself?
In my opinion, it means you're easy. You're either you're after attention, or you don't respect yourself because you're just letting yourself go with random people that you meet. I mean, if you're 21 and you had 22 people, that's like more than one a year. So there's no long-term relationships there, so you're not benefiting from it.
Again, I don't know why anyone ought to behave with the goal of having long-term committed relationships. And again, I don't see how you've made the argument that engaging in consensual sex with other people means you don't respect yourself.
I don't mean engaging in consensual sex doesn't mean, I'm on about if you have multiple sexual partners in a year or 2 years, then there is obviously, you're a bit, in my opinion, like I said, this is just my opinion, I'm not trying to cause trouble, but in my opinion, you're just not that much respectful of yourself.
Right, and I'm asking how you've come to that conclusion.
Personally, it's the way I've been brought up, and I've watched the female members of my family have respect for themselves. When they go out and a man approaches them, they'll date for a while before they do anything. And then if they come out of relationships, they wait a while.
I just want to know like the logical premises to where you have premise 1, premise 2, and then your conclusion. How is your conclusion that someone having multiple partners means they don't respect themselves? What logical train of thought leads to that conclusion?
Having multiple partners in such a short amount of time, like sexual partners says, and you're saying, why would I think it's not respecting yourself? Because you're letting yourself be easy.
What do you mean by what do you mean by be easy? Like, do you think that women have a lot of sexual offers from men?
Yes. Same goes for men. I'm not saying this is just for women. I'm saying this is for men as well. It's disrespectful.
Right, but
men disrespect themselves as well.
Sure. So if women have like 100 men who are interested in having sex with them, and we'll even use your number of 22, like that still shows a selection process.
Yeah, okay, there's a selection process, but to me, even if you have to go through the selection process of choosing them, it's still easy.
If there is a selection process, then I don't know how you can come to the conclusion that they're easy.
Because even though they're doing the selection process to look at the aspects they like in that person to have sexual intercourse with, once they've found, if those 100 people with all the aspects they liked.
Wait. What characteristics do you need to find in someone in order for it to be a valid sexual encounter?
Well, it depends what you like. If like you just said, you said 100 people message a woman, a female, for example, and she chose 22 of them, like I said. But if all those 100 were the things that she liked, like the hair, the eye colour, etc., she would, if she's easy, she would sleep with all of them. But if they're only choosing 22, then they've obviously chosen the aspects they like, the appearance, the personality, etc. But they're still easy.
I think you've just recanted then on your premise, because then essentially we would need to look at like interest and sample size, not just the body count in itself.
But I don't know any. I haven't got nothing in front of me to like do that, so I can't really comment on that. But in my personal experience of day-to-day life,
then your premise would fail.
without the data in front of me, then yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, in my day-to-day going through life, the women I've seen and men, like I said, and men that have had high body counts, I've got no respect for themselves. They are when they go out on a night out. They are when they get approached, they're easy. I think it's just distasteful.
Again, I don't know. I don't think you've really quantified what easy is, because we can still see that there are some fundamental standards. And I don't know why being easy means you don't have respect. I have many friends who I would consider like even easygoing, to where when we plan group things, they're like, yeah, whatever you guys decide. I'm here along for the ride to enjoy myself. And I think that's fine. It doesn't mean they don't respect themselves.
Yeah, but being easygoing and having a fun time going places is different to being easy in a sexual content.
I think a lot of men have just characterized women as easy in order to kind of put them into two buckets. I think that,
like I said, I say the same for men as well.
Body count is just the branch of a tree of purity culture. As if somehow choosing to have limited partners means that you have higher moral value, when I don't think it does.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing before I go. Like, I'm reading the comments. I'm not targeting females specifically. I am saying for both sexes here. Just
I don't know why you're talking to the comments and not me.
No, I'm talking to you. I'm just like saying, like, people who are listening. I'm not targeting women. I'm saying really both male and female.
It really gets the conversation off track when you engage with the third party who's kind of spectating.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, that's all I want to say really anyway, so I'll let you get another guest in anyway. Okay. And nice talking to you. Thank you for your time.
You too. Yep, bye-bye.
Before we start, I want to confirm I'm 45. I know I sound young, it's just my voice.
Okay.
But I would have to argue that feminism and the modern day feminist movement has actually become a lot more harmful and dangerous, especially to men like me, which is an SA survivor and DV survivors.
Okay. Can you give me a source on that?
Just my own observation and experiences.
Do you think that your anecdote can have a biased analysis and not be reflective of a majority of experiences?
Well, when I see these experiences happening to other men in support groups and other platforms, I would say no.
So, well, let's just test that and see if like there's an inherent biases. What tenets of modern feminism targets male sexual assault victims?
The fact that they keep trying to silence our voices and telling us we deserved it for being men.
Where is that statement? Can you give me a source on that?
I have had them tell me this here on TikTok. I have gone to.
Can you actually give me a source? Because when you tell me these anecdotes, there's no way I can verify it. And I can just, essentially, if we're going to have this discussion, I can just say the opposite is true.
If you're not going to listen, I'm not talking.
Okay. Well, that's your choice. I did not kick, by the way.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good to hear.
Now,
What's your take?
what's my take? I think that a lot of people forget that there's a balance in feminism and masculinity. That a lot of times it's an energy that we all take on, whether we're male or female.
So do you disagree with any of these topics?
A couple of them I do, because there are certain things that we tend to overlook because there may not be a huge study done on it because it hasn't been brought to the forefront yet. And there are different, ways of viewing things. A lot of like men, we tend to stay shut and quiet.
I don't want to cut you off, but I want to make sure that we have a clear direction where we're going. Which topic do you disagree with?
Let's talk about the body count thing, for instance. I can be pretty neutral and biased with that. Yes, ma'am.
So what is your premise regarding body count?
Well, I feel that people that run around and do those kind of things and raise their body count pretty high end up becoming pretty numb to things such as sexual intimacy. When you put yourself through a lot of things, through a lot of people, it becomes a whatever kind of situation. And there are many forms of intimacy in a relationship. And when you start to deaden that sense, you no longer have that bond in that area of sacred, being sacred between somebody. And this is for both male and female. It's not just that females do this. It's not just that males do this. It's something that we have to be careful with so we can progressively move on balanced in our relationships.
So how does having intercourse with multiple people desensitize your capacity to experience emotional connection or intimacy?
Well, because it becomes routine. It becomes something that you don't have any actual value to. You can run through multiple people, and as you do that, your subconscious gets reprogrammed saying, hey, it's just an everyday movement. It's a form of freedom. It's a form of all these things, and we find ways to make it sound okay versus what we're actually taking away and reprogramming our subconscious with. So
how
therefore,
what physiologically happens or even psychologically happens to where your subconscious is reprogrammed?
well, I know of a lot of people that have gone through this, and they can no longer find an intimate bond between two people because they have ran through those cycles.
I'm not interested in your anecdotes because all of
I'm not being rude, ma'am. Not everything is on a website. Not everything is accounted for.
Wait. I'm not being rude either. I'm telling you,
Okay.
I'm not interested in your anecdotes because, again, like I told the last guest, I can just say the opposite. Like, I know a lot of people with high body count who have had successful, long-term, committed relationships. So we have to have some kind of objective standard for knowledge and information here.
But let me ask you, what is the divorce rate today compared to what it was before we took on these beliefs?
1 second, I will answer that question. I have found no literature that supports what you're saying.
Well, that's because a lot of men don't speak out. We're not allowed to. We're not able to, because if we do, we're in our feelings. We're no longer respected. We're not supposed to have these views.
There's
extreme feminism will shut us down through manipulation of facts. If it's not in black and white, it's not there.
You can't substantiate that either. There are many academic papers who are written by men, and men can participate in surveys anonymously to where they don't receive feedback on what they're communicating internally. Like, what are you talking about?
So let me ask you something. We want to believe in today's society that that we're all balanced, and our new ways of looking into things, be it feminism or any of these things, are healthy for us. When there is very much extremes, and lots of people manipulate it by saying, well, there's no proof on the internet that says this. When the fact is, if you can't sit back and look at the pattern alone and just use your own eyes, all those things, it will prove a lot of things. We don't need the government or somebody to create us.
So wait, let me respond. I disagree because within that control or what you're talking about, you are not actually having any methodology that would make the study free from bias, that would have the similar questions with each person within the study, and then no actual pool of diversity. So if let's say let's say for example, I went and bought a Subaru. And now that I am driving this Subaru, I see more Subarus on the road. Do you think it would be a logical conclusion for me to say that since I have bought my Subaru, more people have purchased Subarus than any other car?
Well, no, but at the same point, I can make those observations, but that's the difference in being biased.
It's based off of my observation. Why can't I make that conclusion?
But why is your conclusion and your observation, is it biased or is it extreme?
Great. So now we both recognize that our observations of anecdotal evidence can be biased, which is why I don't want to have a discussion based on your anecdotes.
It's not an antidote. You can look at the divorce rates. You can see that over the last 60 years, our divorce rate has drastically declined.
Tell me why divorce rates are reflective of high body count.
Do you think that it might be because we don't no longer have the intimacy, that we are numb to sharing ourselves with multiple people now? And that we find and manipulate situations to make it okay?
You need to tell me how this is causational, because I have analyzed that kind of data. You did not give it to me causational. You need to have something that supports it. That's just your hypothesis. Because the data also suggests that the highest divorce rates are by people who have 1 or 2 body counts.
Okay, so let's flip the script. What says that feminism isn't the cause of the divorce rate?
I'm not making that claim. You are. You would need to show how feminism is.
Unfortunately, there isn't always much in the system or situations out there. A lot of these are studies that are created that are based off of someone else's honesty when it's recorded. And unfortunately, we live in a society where honesty is based on someone else's ability to self-reflect. And
how are you coming to that conclusion if you don't have any research or literature?
So what you're trying to tell me is science is the only way to prove this. Literature is the only way to prove this. All these things. You can't sit back and take a reflective vision.
Then we can control look, so when we talk about literature and sources, there's 2 kinds of data that we can collect. We can collect quantitative or qualitative. Qualitative is people's actual anecdotal experiences, but the methodology and how we collect that and analyze it is important, which is why I'm not going to have this discussion with you just based on your anecdotes, because we can't.
See, now that's control of the situation. You don't want to have the discussion because it don't meet your boundaries.
No, because it doesn't meet any kind of academic or scientific standard of being free from bias and actually constructed within an effective manner and actually analyzed from a non-biased perspective. I don't know what's hard about that to understand.
It's not a matter of what you're saying is absolutely wrong, by no means. I get where you're coming from in your perspective. I very well do. But when you're unable to step outside of your controlled situation of it has to be documented, it means that you are controlling the narrative of whatever proof or forefront or idealization that can be brought forward.
If you give me something, I will read it. If you give me something, I will read it.
If I
you
give
just
you
don't
something,
have anything except your own biased perspective.
So
and I'm done talking about this. Like, I'm not going to go round by round with you for you telling me that your anecdote has material knowledge within this conversation.
It is your live feed, and I will respect your choice in that. But at the same point, my point and deal is just as well likely and needs to be heard as what yours does. And you're controlling through your own narrative and your own boundaries to make it to where I cannot be heard. It has to be written on paper. It has to be there.
No,
unfortunately, and even you are controlling me by over-talking me.
Please remember that I give you your mic, and I can take it away. If we are going to have a debate, there has to be some kind of standard of knowledge. I have told you the standard of knowledge, which I think is absolutely 100% fair. You have a very low bar to meet. If you can't meet that, then go.
Do you think that all scientific,
I'm done. I'm done discussing that. Can you meet that?
lady, you want to do nothing but control your extreme feminism? That's it.
So I guess that's a no. Then you can go, sir.
This is an extreme toxic feminist outview.
Yes, it is.
No, you're a little. I'm not going to resort to ad homs. I'm sorry that you could not meet the bar, which honestly is in hell. Like, that's how low it is. I asked you to come from a place of knowledge. That is not a high bar to meet. And it's funny how you have to come on my platform to have your voice heard.
Thank you for the hand heart. And the roses. Love that for me. Hello, welcome.
Wow. I just wanted to speak on, I guess, the toxic masculinity first. What is the definition?
Sure.
If you don't mind me asking, what is the definition of so-called toxic masculinity?
So that would be marked by the behavioral traits of stoicism, competitiveness, aggression, dominance, misogyny, and homophobia.
Okay, what does homophobia have to do with toxic masculinity? Or masculinity in general?
I would say contemporary masculinity has been constructed through a heterosexual lens, where gay men are stereotyped to represent more feminine qualities and are emasculated because of that. And that you aren't really a man, or held in the highest masculine regard if you're gay.
Okay, because you don't fit the traditional masculine role, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay. So as far as masculinity goes, what is how are some of the negative things, if you don't mind me asking, within, like, specifically besides the homophobia and stuff like that and the roles of it? What are the traits that you're necessarily calling masculine as toxic?
I already named them.
So aggression and dominance was two of them, right?
Yep. Competitiveness, stoicism, misogyny, and homophobia.
How is competitiveness toxic?
So competitiveness in itself, I'm not saying is a toxic trait, but how it's been constructed within masculinity to also infuse with dominance and aggression has become very very toxic. So I would argue that we can see that specifically within workplace culture or in male-dominated spaces. That would manifest itself in acting like a bully to maintain a constant competitive advantage, developing a mindset which would be avoid losing at all costs, which can obviously compromise someone's ethics as well as behavior towards others by approaching conflict only showing strength and aggression in order to continue domination, which can also be expressed through microaggressions between other men and women.
Okay. So well, like you said earlier, like the competitiveness and the aggressiveness and the dominance. So basically what you're saying is how it's been, brought out nowadays, as in like how it's being abused in a way. Like the competitiveness, like you first said, the competitiveness is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's how it's been abused.
It's how it's being infused with other characteristics, and then touted as something to be revered. A lot of men who essentially exploit and bully other people in the name of capitalism to get ahead are considered to be like socially, is considered to be socially acceptable.
Okay. So would you agree with the statement that maybe masculinity is not toxic in of itself, but maybe how it's been how do I put it?
Yeah, I don't think masculinity in itself is toxic. I would say the social prescription that we have constructed through the patriarchy, especially traditional masculinity, has made it toxic.
Okay,
has made elements of it toxic.
So basically, I guess what you're saying is like, for instance, me personally as a man, I've seen women that like their partners to be, and this is a heterosexual relationship that I'm speaking on. So I've come across, personal that most women would like to have a more dominant man or a competitive man and stuff like that, but within a positive way. Which like so basically would you agree with the fact that maybe masculinity nowadays is not what it used to be, and maybe it's the fact of like the men have not been actually properly taught how to be men, and therefore has been abused the masculine role in of itself?
Well, I would argue that patriarchy dates back to like from my research as early as like Greece, which is obviously like I think 3500 BC. So at least for the last 5500 years, we have seen kind of this social standard of male domination. And I think that would need to change in order for a different social construction of masculinity to occur.
I get what you're saying. So with the toxic masculinity thing is I feel like a lot of men, when they first see that, they are automatically like, how are women getting mad at my masculine traits? But it's more so they're getting mad at the masculine traits because they're being abused, those traits. As if those traits, when they were put in check before, or they were put in properly, and how to be raised into a boy and so forth, into a man that goes into be a man, that we didn't see things like that. Like a lot of days, me personally, I see a lot of men act, like you said, act out on an aggression and stuff like that. But a true masculine man would sit there and ponder on things. He would sit there, observe and analyze something, a situation, rather than act out or lash out in anger or aggressiveness or any such thing. But because I guess my thing on toxic masculinity was the fact that I always viewed it as many women just attacking men just for them to be men. Like, for instance, if a man wanted to help a woman change a tire, well, some women would argue the fact of like, well, I don't need a man teach me how to do something simple. Well, men tend to be good in those areas. So therefore, they tend to be good.
I think that's a form of benevolent sexism.
And how so?
So why do men typically want to pull over and help a woman change a tire? It's because they see themselves as more qualified.
Well, the mechanical industry is mainly men, is it not?
It is only because of how the gender construction has occurred.
Okay.
Essentially, it treats women as if they are incompetent or incapable.
But there's many women that do not actually want to enter the mechanical field or the industrial field, like electrical, plumbing, so forth.
I disagree with that. And even if I were to agree with that, I would argue that it is because of gender roles, because women are told to shy away from STEM and from what is considered more laborious work and put into a category where they should be more nurturing.
Okay. But when it comes to more laborious work, aren't men more qualified to be in that field because their bodies are actually able to withhold the more laborious work? Like we are physically stronger than a woman would be.
Because there's a lot of tools within labor that women can perform just as well as men.
But there's also tools that a woman could not handle within pure raw strength. Also,
maybe not some women, but I would argue there are some men who aren't strong enough to do either. It's not necessarily about brute force strength that leads to the best outcomes, even within labor. It's the utilization of tools as well as the strategy when it comes to approaching the task. If you have a saw and the task is to cut down a tree, do you think I'll be more productive if I have a chainsaw?
Well, yes, the tools
Right.
are
So then
made to
again,
make things easier. I will agree on that.
great. So then again, it's the tools and the strategy in place, not just the brute force strength.
Okay. Well, whenever a welder has to weld up steel, or he has to hold, like for instance, he has to bring the materials with him that weighs a lot. A man is more qualified to be able to hold those materials and those things to bring with him in order to construct what he has and he needs to construct. So therefore,
Again,
it's not just
that's
sitting
sure.
there.
I can agree with you. That is typically. So I have a personal trainer, and my personal trainer constantly says how many exercise I outperform his male trainees in terms of strength and weight. And it's because either I weigh more than them or I weigh equal to them. So the reason that men categorically are stronger is just because of size.
Well, men are more stronger because they have higher levels of testosterone.
Which
It's a,
makes things bigger. So it is size.
no, not necessarily.
It is, because even if
Testosterone does not work necessarily based off size.
testosterone is what influences size, which is why you see many steroid users use testosterone to make themselves bigger.
Yes, but
Yeah.
having a higher level of testosterone also in and of itself creates strength as well. Yes, it does in size if you were to abuse it.
It does not. It does not.
But women are
Because
tend to be weaker
then you
because they
would,
don't have
no,
the testosterone levels than men.
women still do have testosterone levels, but
Not like men.
Correct. But again, it is just to make it size, in terms of size, because if women were to have the same muscular structure, or excuse me, muscle size in terms of just like it's the same size as a man, they would be equally as strong.
Yes, but they do not.
Right. So I'm telling you, it's not because women are just innately weaker. It's because we are smaller.
No, you're smaller
Like
and your body is not able
is a
to
bigger man
have the strength
stronger
because
than
you
a
don't
smaller
possess the
man?
testosterone.
Is a bigger man stronger than a smaller man?
Okay. Then why is it that women that
Is that a yes?
say that again?
Is
What
a
was the question?
bigger man stronger than a smaller man?
No, not always.
So what's the delineation?
Muscle strength and bigger is not always equate to each other.
So then it talks about density. So would a woman who works out and actually gets the muscle tears and builds that density be stronger than a man who does not do
No,
that? No. Okay.
no, she cannot because her body does not possess the testosterone that she needs. That's why women to be able to get stronger in competitive fields and to actually be successful in the competitive fields, a lot of them abuse testosterone just like men would.
It's again to make themselves bigger. Because no, like I guess my personal trainer talks about how often there are competitive women who lift more than him, and he's a big guy.
That does, I mean, that's a biased opinion in of
How
itself,
is that a
but
biased opinion when
that's
he
not an
takes
actual
down?
natural thing or normal
How
thing
is
to
that a
happen.
biased opinion when he like records his own bench, his own squats, and then sees that their numbers are higher?
Okay. Does he go to the
How is
gym?
that a biased opinion?
Is he active?
Yeah,
Is he within the competitive field? Is he within the
he's not within the competitive field, but that wasn't your argument. I asked if women train their muscles, can they become stronger than men? And you said no. And then I give you an example where that's not true.
okay, but that's not necessarily true either, though, because that's what I'm trying to tell you. There's women bodybuilders that still can't lift as much pure strength, not technique, not form, how you do the form or technique within the field, but just pure raw strength that are not stronger than an average man that's walking around that doesn't even go
They
to the
are
gym.
stronger than
They're
the
not.
average man because they lift more than the average men. Yes.
No, they're not. Not pure raw strength.
What is pure raw strength? What does that mean to you?
In the bodybuilding or the muscle building competitions, there's just things that's called form and technique. So therefore you can harness and get good at doing the form and technique of something and then increase the weight over time. Yes. But then you have pure raw strength, which technically just be like, how much can you, like say with weight, how much can you really drag? Like can between two people how much can they drag 300 pounds? That's just pure brute strength, pure raw
But
strength.
that's not what we're talking about. I asked you if women can train themselves to outperform men in terms of strength, and you said no. That just because of testosterone, men will always be stronger than women, even if that man does not work out and she does. And I think that's obviously glaringly not true.
Okay, but if you take the same man and within the same field, he would have to work. He would only have to really work out
Wait,
in
do
that
you
field.
concede that statement is not true? That's women can train to become stronger than men?
To a certain degree, I'll agree. Yes,
Great.
I will agree to a certain degree. But back to what we're talking about, the work field. So you saying that through patriarchy and the competition of through the work field is the reason why women don't go into that field?
So there's a multitude of reasons. I would say that, yes, ultimately women are socially conditioned to take on more of a caregiving role, which is why we see pink collar jobs typically to be teachers, secretary, child care providers, nurses, where men are typically more encouraged to go into STEM and labor jobs.
Okay.
But
So
even when women do break that gender role, they typically are not met with favorable results to where they can experience upward mobility, mentorship, as well as freedom from like sexual harassment and exclusivity, like with the idea of like the boys club.
Okay, but in the blue collar field, men probably sexually harass each other more than they would a woman. I feel like, what is the definition of sexual harassment? Do you take joking, as in what men would do to each other? It's the same to a woman to make her feel, part of the boys, so-called, quote unquote. Like, do you feel like that's sexual harassment?
I'm not going to give like a specific answer to such a vague question. Typically, I would define sexual harassment as unwanted sexual advancements.
Okay, so we're on the same page. Okay, I gotcha. Because I've heard things about sexual harassment in the workplace, but then also sometimes men within the work field like that they will try to make a woman feel like part of the boys, so they'll joke around with her and stuff like that, just like they would with each other, but not meant necessarily in a, like you said, in unwanted sexual advances. But of course, unwanted sexual advances is sexual harassment.
Men will often leverage their position of power to extort sexual favors or performance from women.
I get what you're saying. So, would you say that a natural woman and a natural man, taking the fact of without abusing substances or working towards anything, like a natural woman and a natural man, would you say that women, so are you saying women are less stronger to beat than men?
I'm saying that typically men are stronger, and it is typically because men are bigger.
I get what you're saying. Okay. So what is wrong with having women in the more nurturing fields like nurses, teachers, things of that nature?
Because it's a subordinate position. And I think really any prescription socially based on someone's gender leads to gender biases. Or I should say like sexist outcomes.
Okay. So if a natural woman does not you know,
I don't know what you mean by natural woman.
because earlier we got on topic about the athletic stuff. That's what I mean by
You
just,
can just say woman.
okay. So a woman naturally possesses the ability that's not strength. Well, she does not possess the natural abilities of strength and things of that nature, and the hard labor on her body. So therefore, why would it be bad for her to go into a field that she is more better at? So for, you know, than a man would be, like a nurturing field.
So I think that framing is sexist in general, because I think if we're going to talk about like natural strength, it shouldn't be based in gender. It should be based in age. I would say that just your youth and typically like the age period that you're in determines your natural physical ability. Because as we grow, regardless of training, there's only a certain level of strength that you can attain based on your age. So if you are a healthy 70-year-old, the strongest you can be, if my memory serves me for the graph, is like an unhealthy 40-year-old.
Okay. I'm not sure if you answered the question, so I'm going to reiterate the question again. So if women do not possess the traits of, you know, being strengthened, hard labor, and things of that nature, then why is it bad for them to go into a job field that is more suited for them?
They can just go through conditioning. Everyone goes through conditioning when it comes to laborious jobs, even professional athletes.
Okay, but you just said that women don't possess those traits like a man would as far as strength and
not
labor.
to the same degree, but they do possess the traits. Like women are strong.
So would you agree that there's a reason as to why men are in the certain job fields they are, and as to women as to certain job fields they are? Because physically
I don't think it's
cannot.
natural. I think it's structural. I think it's socially structural.
What do you mean socially structural?
I think these have been structured in order to maintain male dominance. Which I think we can see through a lot of sexist statements that you have made. You're trying to make the argument that men should be in laborious positions because they are just stronger than women, which is giving the implication that women are weak, when women are not weak.
But you just said that women are weaker to men.
One second, I'm almost done. There are men who are weaker to other men. So if we were to line up all men on a line, there would be men who are weaker than other men. The same goes true if we were to mix women in that. It would be a variety depending on someone's athletic ability, age, and size.
Okay,
so that if we're gonna
this debate isn't about lining up men or women only. This debate is about lining up man and woman.
Because you're just categorically saying women are weak, therefore they should not participate. Is that correct?
No, that is not what I'm saying. If a woman wants to go work into a laborer's field like a man, then she can.
Tell me your
but she's going to have a tougher time.
2 sentences. Sure, and a man who's older is going to have a tougher time.
Yeah, which is why you have retirement.
Great. So I'm saying that there shouldn't be that discrimination based on gender, that depending on tools and strategy, I would argue that women can be just as productive as men, which we actually saw during World War II. When men went off to war, women had to take their place in terms of factory positions, and the outcome and production level was actually higher. Go ahead, Sean.
I just wanted to end this thought process of like laborious positions being harder for women, because when it comes to laborious positions, there is zero laborious positions for humans that have any appreciable difference between men and women's strength. Like there's no laborious position where you have to like utilize what you incorrectly called brute strength to do literally anything that a man can do that a woman cannot do. Like most labor positions actually take on like more cardiovascular like strain than anything else. Like welders, carts. Like when you welders have heavy equipment, they get carts. They do not carry their equipment around in their hands. Like plumbers get lifting bags. Like they do not carry that shit around like in their hands. Like what you're talking about doesn't make any sense. There's no laborious condition. There's no laborious condition that has an appreciable difference in strength between men and women, or even requires like an amount of what you incorrectly call brute strength, because lifting is all about technique. Like when you're on a couch, you don't lift with your back. Like it's all about technique.
But who could lift the couch better, a man or a woman?
It does not matter. Like there's no appreciable difference between men and women when lifting couches. No, it doesn't.
Why would you hire two women to pick up 100-pound couch?
No, you're just making that. Then show a stat. Show a stat.
What do you mean?
Wait, if the couch is lifted, what's the argument?
The argument I'm telling him is who can lift a couch better, a man or a woman?
The couch is lifted. What do you mean by better?
He was talking about moving a couch.
Sean's pronouns are stupid.
The issue is that like you're talking about the difference in strength and people having an easier time. Men don't have an easier time lifting couches than women have an easier time lifting couches. Like you're just making that up. There is actually no.
I'm not making that up. It's much easier for a man to pick up a heavier object than it is for a woman.
Show us that. Show us that.
What do you mean show us that? We've already talked about bodybuilding. Go take a bodybuilder, a male bodybuilder and a female bodybuilder, and go see what their average bench press and leg press is.
What's the weight class of those men and women?
Pick any weight class.
Okay, so what is the weight class you're talking about? Because you brought it up. So pick a weight class. Like women of the same weight class of men can lift just as much as men. Like I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
What I'm saying is a 6-foot woman and a 6-foot man, a man is going to be incredibly heavier than a woman. Let me ask you this big question. If I'm thinking about weight class, you could be split but heavier than someone, or 6 foot and less heavy than someone. Like you don't know what you're talking about. Like hey Sean, not to be rude,
let me ask you this basic question about weight training. Let me ask you this basic question about weight training. Stop talking. Let me ask you this basic question about weight training. Can your body differentiate between muscle and fat?
Yes.
No, it cannot. You don't know what you're talking about. You have zero idea what you're talking about.
What do you mean your body can't differentiate between muscle and fat? Fat doesn't make up strength.
Your body cannot differentiate between muscle and fat.
Sean, your mic's cutting.
Oh my God.
Are you there, Sean? Okay, to reiterate what he was asking, what exactly did he, well, excuse me. To reiterate what Sean was asking, what was, I don't know, I'm assuming he's one of your, well, my bad, Sean is one of your friends, so therefore, the question was your body differentiate between muscle and fat. Where was that question coming from? As in what basis that you cannot differentiate?
She's back in the request, so I'll let her make the argument.
The question was about basic weight training. You learn when you first start lifting that your body cannot differentiate between muscle and fat. When you're overweight, your body just reads that you're overweight. So when your heart is working, like it is working just as hard if you have like 100 pounds of fat versus 100 pounds of muscle. So like when you're doing like weightlifting, like you need to be aware of like how hard your heart works, how much you can actually lift, et cetera, et cetera. Like your body cannot differentiate between muscle and fat. And if you don't know that, then you don't know anything about weight training.
Okay, now that you put context to it, I understand where you're coming from, yes. But
literally the question about muscle and fat when it comes to weight training.
Yes, but like but an average person is not weight training either. So, but if they're severely obese, they'll have to lose the weight for their. Okay, but within weight training, yes. If you're abusing weight training with steroids, then yes, your heart's going to have a hard time, which is why we've seen many
regardless of if you're using steroids, you don't know what you're talking about.
Let's keep in mind that we both need to give each other the space to speak.
Okay. What I was saying was, a natural bodybuilder, his body is only going to build so much muscle mass because his genetic code will not allow him to break past that. But he can build more strength in his muscle, but he cannot build more muscle mass because his genetic code will not allow him. That is not false. That's why people abuse steroids to get bigger. They use steroids to break past that genetic code.
What do you build muscle from?
Protein synthesis and wear and tear.
You build it from muscle.
No, you do not. You cannot transform fat to muscle. That is a false stigma in the gym community.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, I do know what I'm talking about. Muscle can never convert into fat.
Okay, so then why do you eat in order to get bigger?
You eat to gain the calories and the fuel in order to obtain the higher protein synthesis to build more muscle. To say that again, Sean, I think you're breaking up again. What was the last question?
What does the calories? What do the calories turn into?
Fuel for your body.
Fuel. You don't know what you're talking about.
Energy would be.
You have no idea.
What do you mean? If you take an active person, they consume and take more protein and calories and carbs and everything during that whenever they're trying to get bigger in the gym. That's why you call it the bulking phase. So whenever you try and get bigger, you consume more food. But if you try to consume that same amount of food, if you're not in the gym, you're going to gain more fat. Overall, it's fuel for your body. But if your body's not burning it off or using it to put towards something, then you're going to gain fat. So I don't know. I'm not understanding what the question is here because you consume food overall and you need carbs, calories, protein, and everything else in general. So that's why in order to, whenever people trim down or trim the fat down to cut in the gym, when they get to their cutting phase, their caloric deficit, they're going to put themselves in a caloric deficit. But during the cutting phase, you cannot bulk more muscle mass. It's how you put the food into what you're putting it towards. If you're not active, you're just going to gain fat, but you can never convert that fat. You can trim the fat down by consuming less amount of foods, and basically in a way you are slightly starving yourself because you got to put your body in a caloric deficit. So therefore you have to trim the fat down, but it never converts into muscle.
When you're utilizing your body utilizes the fat in order to build muscle because the fat that's within your body can be utilized as fuel in order to build muscle. When you're doing like weight training and weightlifting, the reason as to why you eat carbs is because carbs allows you to get bigger. Especially when it comes to, but like when you say things like if a person abuses these things, like abuses testosterone or abuses weightlifting, you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to weightlifting. You don't know what you're talking about.
When I speak of abuse, I speak of testosterone abuse, which is steroid abuse.
All right, cool. So when we're talking about weightlifting, the issue is that you don't know that much about weightlifting, and you keep talking about it because like you keep saying like there's an appreciable difference between men and women when it comes to things like lifting a couch, and a woman can't do that job as good as a man.
I never said she couldn't do the job. I said a man could do a better job at it.
That's what I just said. That's what I just said.
I stand corrected.
So, like, there's no appreciable difference in manual labor between men and women. Like, you're just making that up.
I don't get what I'm making up. The host has already clarified that women are weaker than men on the, it is what it is. Typically, yes. On average, an average woman is going to be weaker than a man. So why would you, if a man could do the job easier? I would argue
only in upper body strength. In lower body strength, I think there is a lot of equity.
there is, when it comes to lifting, it is technique. And like, just because the host said like typically that women will be weaker than men does not mean that there'll be an appreciable difference in manual labor jobs.
Okay. But it makes it easier if you have more strength, would it not? And that's what I'm kind of confused on. What
the average woman with the exact same weight type as a man.
But you're not answering my question. If you have more strength, would it not make the job easier, Sean?
That means that for men and women both.
No, you're not answering my question still. You're bypassing my question, Sean.
She is answering the question. She is answering the question. Because it just comes down to the person's capability of strength, which wouldn't be reflected in gender.
Exactly. I'm talking about how the difference in strength is not reflected in gender. And you're just saying, like, if you're stronger, will it make it easier? That's the same for men and women.
Yes. So, like host has clarified, an average woman to a man is going to be weaker. So why would you not have higher
typically.
Yeah.
And
so
I said that's typically because of size difference.
If you're hiring, actually is the
are men typically bigger than women?
Not always.
Typically.
Yes. But it's not
that
about
is what
size.
I'm saying it is. That's what I'm saying. The difference is in strength is because men are typically bigger.
There are smaller men that could be stronger than a bigger woman.
There are younger women who can be stronger than older men.
The average 150-pound man and the average 150-pound man and the average 150-pound woman can lift just about the same. Like, we're going by weight class here, dude. Like, you're just making things up in order to, like, make your argument.
But that's not the question. The question is...
No, it is the question.
The question is... No, that is that question. My question was, if you're hiring, if you're a company owner or a manager, and you need to hire some people for laborious work, for moving furniture, would you hire somebody that's have more strength and to do the job easier without hurting themselves? Or would you hire somebody that could be weaker and could hurt themselves in doing the process?
That's not a gender-based question. That's just what kind of results do you want to see?
But we've come to the conclusion that an average female is going to be weaker than an average man.
Only because of size.
No, it's not about size because women do not inherit the testosterone levels of a man that man has.
It is about size and age.
Okay,
yes,
then why in the bodybuilding industry they abuse steroids?
Okay, I guess it's your turn to talk.
Then why in the bodybuilding industry they abuse steroids to gain more testosterone?
This was already addressed. And testosterone manipulates size. So people take testosterone in order to get bigger. And that's both men and women. You're not paying attention.
There's steroids that don't necessarily make you bigger, but make you stronger. And it heightens your testosterone.
You literally just tried to tell me that in order to get stronger, you have to get bigger. Which means you have to manipulate.
I said not necessarily always, but yes,
no.
You can.
You said you have to abuse. You have to abuse. When it comes to us agreeing with what you're saying, even when we say, okay, let's say you're right, but in order to do this, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You go, no, because what I said before doesn't matter, because getting bigger doesn't actually matter. It doesn't actually matter about taking testosterone or not in order to get bigger. What are you talking about?
Oh, before you hopped on, me and the host were talking.
Everything before I hopped on.
Okay. Well, me and the host were talking about, she asked me the question, does men are stronger because they're bigger? And I said, not necessarily, but on average, yes. The bigger does not always mean stronger. There are men in the bodybuilding industry that are smaller than some other men, but they're stronger. Muscle strength does not always equate to bigness.
Typically that is true, though. If the size of the muscle is larger, it is typically stronger. I do agree that there's also factors when it comes to density as well as thickness, but again, that we're talking about
the key factor that
Wait, but we're
enhances
talking
muscle
about weight
strength
though.
is testosterone.
Wait, we're talking about
So,
weight class though. Like, because you can be 5'6", but still like 180 pounds and lift just as much as someone else or more than someone else who's 6 foot and 180 pounds.
160-pound man is going to be stronger than a 180-pound woman.
So, according to the Journal of Exercise Physiology, women generally produce about 2/3 the amount of total strength and applied force that men produce. Women are also physically built so that they can generally carry 2/3 as much muscle mass as men. That proves that there is, in fact, a difference in strength, that men are typically stronger, and the most of the difference is based on body size.
But overall, what fuels muscle strength is testosterone, and women lack that. They have testosterone, but to a smaller degree, which is why in the gym industry,
It's
was
because
gym
of
already
culture,
body
addressed.
size.
This is already addressed. Testosterone manipulates body size to make body size bigger. What are you not getting?
body size doesn't always mean stronger, though. That's what I'm telling you.
That is
Muscle
the difference.
strength does not always mean body
but
size.
that is the difference in what we're talking about in strength. Do you think the Journal of Exercise Physiology is a good source?
I can't speak on it because I've never really looked at it.
So that's what it says, that men are typically stronger, and the most of the difference is based on body size.
Okay, but body size for men and women you can't compare them, because there's men that are to the eyes, they look smaller than a woman next to them, but they could possibly be way stronger than that woman next to them. Because
Bro,
they
we're
inherit
talking
what.
about weight class, bro. We're talking about weight class.
Okay, if you
Stop
take
talking about height.
so you telling
Stop
me a
talking about
150
height, bro.
pound woman and a 150-pound man together, they will be on the same weight level as far as
Just
weight
around. Like, I mean, depending on their history, but just around, yeah. The average 150-pound man and the average 150-pound woman can lift just around the same amount.
No, they cannot.
You made that up. Then prove it.
Prove it. Go take a 230-pound woman and put it up next to me and see what happens.
No. Bring up a source.
So wait. I do want to say, Sean, that typically if we have a 150-pound man and a 150-pound woman, that she has about 2/3 of his muscle mass. So it really relates to muscle mass. If we have equal amount of muscle mass in a woman and equal amount of muscle mass in a man, then that is where they are comparable. And that might be a larger woman. But again, it has to do with size of muscle. And the reason that men are typically stronger is because they have more muscle.
And this is what I want to say with the host just saying that. And that's where the testosterone kicks in, because for women, it is harder to get a woman to 180 pounds of muscle than it is for a man to get 180 pounds of muscle. Because the man can build naturally without steroids.
Then we agree.
Yes.
It is men are only stronger because they have more muscle.
Yes.
Which typically, again, has to do with size. So we agree.
I will agree to a certain extent, because even with men competing with men, there are some men that when you look to the naked eye, they don't look as big as the guy next to them, but they could be possibly stronger. So it's not always true.
I could say that same thing's true about women.
Right, but you keep saying to the naked eye, but we're not talking about to the naked eye. Like, why do you keep doing that?
Because we talked about the work field. Nobody's going to take a scale
we need to adjust the position in order to maintain the sexist attitude. Like, that's what it is.
No, we're talking about the work field. Nobody's going to.
Right. So if we're actually going to take into certain accounts, like, do you think that muscle mass shrinks as you get older?
Repeat that question.
Do you think that your muscle mass gets smaller as you get older?
Yes, your muscle tends to deteriorate because you become less active. It's all about being active.
Not only less active, but because of the change in your hormones, that as you get older, your hormones fluctuate.
Yes.
Yes. So then again, age would also be a great indicator too of someone's capacity for strength. So I don't think that necessarily gender. And again, because even in the workforce, a lot of laborious work is being replaced by machines because the machine can honestly do the work because it gets tired. So it's just the capacity for someone to perform the job. If a woman can lift 50 pounds, if a man can lift 50 pounds, they're equally qualified.
Okay. So I want to bring up a scenario. So one of the...
Why do you want to bring up a scenario? Are you of the philosophy that women should not participate in labor?
No, I'm not against it. If they want to go for it, but they're going to have a tougher
Great.
time
Then what's
than men.
the argument?
The argument is not a machine can't do everything. There's a lot of tasks you can't do everything with the machine. You just can't do it. A machine is not always going to be there to do
There are
everything for
machines
you.
and tools that definitely do aid in performing the task. And
Yes,
again,
some, but
like
not always going to be.
1 second. And like I have repeated so many times, it is not necessarily about the brute force strength that makes someone qualified. It's about the strategy and the tools available to them. Like I gave you the example, if you and I were to cut down trees and you were given a saw and I was given a chainsaw.
But not every task can be done with a machine.
The majority of them.
That would actually make an appreciable difference.
Okay. For instance,
like you really want to talk
like the
about
phones, like the phones we use right now, cell phones, right? Well, we have cell towers for those phones. We have cell tower climbers for those to go up to the tops of the towers to change out equipment. Well, one of the things you have to do in order to climb that tower is you have to put a rope to your side and you have to climb. The higher you climb, the more heavier the rope becomes and the more harder it becomes to climb. Especially when you go on past, 200 feet in the air or past 250 feet in the air. Now,
I'm not really interested in reducing it down to these like specific scenarios.
No.
How are you not interested in specific scenarios when I'm giving you an example of where tools and machines can always not do the job?
Because it's about the...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kenzie.
Go ahead. No, I'm already annoyed with him. Go ahead.
I wanted to hear what his example was because there are women cell tower climbers. I don't, but go ahead. Go ahead. Please finish your example.
Okay. My example is when you have to strap that rope to you, the higher you climb, the heavier it becomes. For a man, it's going to be it's going to be easier. Is it still going to be tough or hard or strenuous? Yes, it will be for either or. If a woman wants to do it, she can, but she's going to have to take more breaks in between or strap herself to the tower in order to take a break. No, I did not make that up. I used to do the work myself. How the fuck did I make something up?
You just said for a woman, she would have to take more breaks. You have no sources that show that. There are women cell tower climbers that can do it better than male cell tower climbers.
The sources are my eyeballs that I use to observe this stuff myself. What are you talking about? I don't need a sheet of paper and .org sources to tell me.
Joe, why would we just take your word for it?
Okay, then we've come to the conclusion already that men are typically stronger than women. So why would it be just as easy for a man or as a woman? It wouldn't. The woman will take a little bit longer time. Can she do the job? Yeah, she can do the job. I'm not saying she can't. And I'm not against about women in the blue collar field. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is certain things are easier to be done by men. And one thing the host said earlier was about domination because it's about patriarchy and domination. What is so dominant about a man climbing to basements or going and doing plumbing work? What is so dominating about that? That's very...
Because you want to exclude women simply on the basis of their gender.
Literally.
That simply because they are a woman, they are not as qualified.
Okay, but then when you see the same men going into being nurses or teachers, they tend to look more...
Sean, go ahead.
Joseph, what you said was not true. Like what you said about the host is just simply not true. Like you got into this discussion.
Why are you calling me the host? Like really, aren't we friends?
God damn it. What you said about my best friend Kinsey is not true. You got into this conversation because you were talking about how, when it comes to changing a tire, men see themselves pulling over and wanting to help a woman change a tire. And Kinsey talked about it's because of benevolent sexism, because men see themselves more qualified. And you got into this argument because you were making the argument that men are more qualified because there's an appreciable difference. You didn't say appreciable, but what you were implying was that there was an appreciable difference between men and women doing laborious jobs. And I asked you for an example of that appreciable difference. And what you're giving me right now is that you're making up an instance about cell tower climbers and women needing to take more breaks whilst climbing a cell tower than men. Like, number one, that's not true. And number two, even if it was, that's not an appreciable difference, because if the job gets done, it gets done.
And I would also argue too, like, if we're going to look at plumbers, like going into crawl spaces, that women would be better because they're smaller and crawl places are smaller.
So overall, what I'm trying to say in this conversation is if men tend to be better at hard laborious work and women tend to be better in more nurturing fields, then what if they want to join those fields because of that? If a man wants to join the field of a hard laborious work because he knows he can do it and make good money from it, or if a woman wants to be a nurse and she can make really good money from it and because she's more nurturing, then what is wrong with that?
Well, we disagree with the premise.
And explain what's the disagreement in that.
I don't think that women are more nurturing than men. I think men have equal capacity to be as nurturing, just like I think women have as equal capacity to perform at the same rate of men, regardless of differences of strength.
Okay. Well, can I say a statement without being interrupted?
Probably not.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try my best anyway. This is how I look at men and women. Neither or are better than the other in my eyes. I feel like women possess certain traits that men cannot possess, which is more compassion and nurturing. And therefore, men
That's a self-report, then.
Say that again?
That's a self-report. I mean, I appreciate that's kind of along the same lines as the argument like men are trash, but go ahead.
Okay. But so overall what I'm saying is men tend to be, when a man sees a woman pulled to the side of the road and she needs a tire changed, he's doing it out of the goodness of his own heart. He's not doing it because, oh, you're a weak, inferior being. I mean, but if he's good at changing a tire.
Why doesn't he help men? Then why doesn't he help men?
They have. I've actually been broke on the side of the road, and I've had men stop and help me. I had a gentleman one time to pull my car off the road or push my car. I was working on a project.
But it's not based in gender.
No, like men help each other all the time.
I disagree with that.
I mean, I'm sorry that you disagree, but from my personal experience, like one time I had a project car that I was working on. Well, it broke down right in the middle of 5 o'clock traffic. And there was two men that pulled over and helped me push my car off the road and actually block traffic just momentarily so we can get it pushed off the road. And I've had help from other men. I've even helped other men myself. And I've seen that a lot. And it's like guys help each other just as would they would see a woman on the side of the road. It's just now some men that don't, I feel like it's just men that don't.
So one second. Like I don't think this tangent is relevant. So when we're talking, because all this stemmed from about benevolent sexism. So benevolent sexism prescribes differential gender roles both within and outside of relationship. This includes beliefs that men ought to be chivalrous protectors and providers who should cherish and make sacrifices for their female partners, and men taking higher status agenic roles and women taking lower status passive roles. So again, benevolent sexism is just a way to reinforce a male domination and female submission, even though men see it as the act of being chivalrous, protective providers. It still upholds male domination, female submission, or male superiority, female inferiority. And honestly, like, I think men should be very aware too, being a stranger coming up to a woman that they don't know, offering aid.
Okay, men come to men that don't know each other offering aid. What's wrong with
Right,
offering
but
aid?
women face higher probability of being like assaulted.
And those are piece of shit men.
Right, I'm saying that you should be aware of that. That when women, you approach women in vulnerable situations, that they perceive you as potentially dangerous.
Understandable. I can understand that. And I feel like men that do want to help a woman out, I feel like they have to be careful and let her know that they're not there to be as a threat either, and that they're just here to
Well,
help.
I mean, that's all going well, but you never. There was recently just a woman who was at like the southernmost point in the United States. That southernmost point has a webcam that runs 24/7. And someone was watching it and reported that this woman was being drugged behind it by another man, and that she then later emerged from it naked, and he was zipping up his pants. And this was actually the second time that she had been sexually assaulted by someone. The first time she was being sexually assaulted, that man stepped in and said, "I'm going to help you and protect you," got her into his car, and then took her to another location to assault her. So yes, how do women decipher someone who is being helpful versus someone who is being helpful because they view you as incompetent or because they're there to harm you? So that's what I'm saying, is that there is acts of chivalry that are inherently sexist. That's just the overarching point that I wanted to make.
Is acts of chivalry bad in of itself?
I would say, yeah.
And why would you say that, Sean?
Because they're rooted in benevolent sexism.
Or even hostile sexism, I would argue.
But if portrayed in the right way, is it bad? Is what I'm saying. If portrayed in the right way.
What is the right way?
If you just simply want to help somebody out, if you just want to help a female out change her tires, is that necessarily bad?
That's not an act of chivalry. But like when it comes to an act of chivalry, you are asserting yourself because you see yourself as like more qualified to do something.
But chivalry is putting. But chivalry in of itself is you putting your woman first. That's why you open the door for her to walk in. First. That's what actual chivalry is, though. Is you putting your partner first. You're not putting yourself first before her. You're putting her before you.
But why do you feel the need to do that?
It is to show respect towards your woman and also to clarify that that's your woman and you're going to put her first above everybody else.
The reason why the door opening thing happened, at least within like realms of history that I've read between England and France, is because men would show off the women that they had, and so they would open the door and make their women walk in first to go, look at this, look at what I got.
Okay, and what is this? Is it a bad thing to show off the partner you're with? You're
doing it simply to get the respect of men, because women have been. Do you think like there's an issue with men viewing women as like objects?
Yes, I will agree on that. That is an issue.
Right. So if a man shows off a woman as if she's an object, how is that not problematic?
Because I feel like there was good intentions in something that started to have good intentions in for, but now it's become tainted in a way. If you get what I'm saying, Sean?
I'm sorry, guys. I have to go. Final statements.
I just want to say thank you for having me here. Sean, you did bring up a lot of good points, even though we got into a little bit of, heated argument. I appreciate y'all's point of view. Like I said, overall, I'm not saying that I'm against women in in the blue collar field. I'm not stating that at all. If they want to be in there, they can be. As a matter of fact, women actually make really great welders because they have better, steadier hands. Like women surgeons make, are better surgeons because they have steadier hands as well than men would. So that's what I want to say. But anyways.
Okay. Sean? I'm sorry, guest.
That off guard. I was not ready. I would say, Joseph, look at the premise and the reason as to why you think like certain things can be done better by other people. Because like when I talk about appreciable difference, I'm talking about like a person can't do something because there's an appreciable difference.
I'm so fucking cute, bitch.